Hi, hello, welcome to this last live of our of the online part of our annual conference 2023. We are focusing on bonds this year, and we've been hearing lots of amazing talks about bonds in lots of different contexts and situations. And today we're gonna be looking into a bond that's really, really, really precious and that everybody loves, because apparently there are so many more pictures of fathers with their babies sleeping on their chest than of mothers. So this tells us about something of how lovely we all find it, and yet, I mean, all the challenges that are in there are also well known. So we are with immense thankfulness that we welcome here today Anna Moeley-Fletcher and Giulia Terranova, our baby brains trainers who have decided that the world needs to know more about the father's brains, and who have really taken the time and the effort to go through the literature, try to understand it, but not only. You know, if they were normal people, that's what they would have done. But they really went through the effort. And I mean, I'm sure you had a little bit of fun as well, maybe,
Yes.
of trying to understand things so well that they can now explain those things to you in a very easy and simple way. So easy and so simple that you're just gonna go like, oh yeah, of course. And if that's how you go after listening to them, that's because of the huge amount of work they've put into it, in understanding it well, and explaining it, finding the right metaphors, similes, examples that really make it click for you, make you connect to it, and it really brings it home. So really, that's a wonderful example, and we are super thankful of how we can make science work for families. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Giulia. And now over to you.
Well, wow, Sylvia, thank you for that introduction. I hope we'll live up to that kind of expectation and nurture that kind of bond. So we did have fun. Questions about fathers' brains and whether or not something happens there uh, come up come up a lot of times during the baby brains workshops that we usually hold, and so. We wanted to dig deeper, and we became more and more passionate about it. So we started with, oh, let's take a look at this and that study, and then it became a huge dive. And but it was fun. It was definitely a lot, but it was fun. And so let's go to it. As you know, this happens in the framework of BabyBrains being a bridge between neuroscience and families. So we're going to try to be that bridge and bridging the gap by bringing to you what neuroscience research has found so far, and hopefully making it understandable to families for good use. So we wondered, when and how do we become mothers and fathers, right? How and when do we become parents? And there can be various takes on this, whether we consider this moment to be at childbirth or at the discovery of pregnancy, when we actually start thinking about having a child, or maybe the first time we actually hold our baby. Whatever the take is, the answer to this question is quite complex. When you talk about mothers, the experience they have is more visible, right? It brings along visible changes for the mother herself, and these changes can be easily perceived by her partner as well, and by society at large. But when we talk about dads, the situation is definitely more complex and subtle. So
So that's why we asked our community to help us answering 3 questions, and these were the results. Actually, we asked, when do you think that you become a dad? And the main part of our community answered that it's when you start wishing, desiring a daughter or a son. And do you think that you are born a father or you become a father? And here we can see that 91% of the community answered that you become a father, actually. So in the end, we asked them, so what do you think is an involved dad? And they, the main part of the community, the main answer that is the person who applies the same play educational methods as the mother, who takes care exactly as the mother of the baby. So scientists too are asking questions about fathers. And if the studies on the brain and mind of children are relatively recent, and those on maternal brain are very, very recent, research on the paternal brain could almost be considered as futuristic.
Yes, definitely. And so we decided to start off with what we think we might know more about, which is mothers' brains. So I'll start with that and what science seemed to know best. We do know that mothers are supported and exquisitely equipped, starting from pregnancy, with evident enhancement of brain structures that are useful for taking care of children, for their parenting role. And scientists have measured clear changes in specific brain structures in women following pregnancy, which contributes to an increased ability to understand others, particularly, how surprising, their own child. And these changes also lead to a more effective fine-tuning and attunement, you would say, to the calls and requests of their child. This demonstrates how nature provides mothers with powerful, very powerful tools to support the caregiving task.
And on the other hand, children too are designed by nature to elicit caregiving behavior in parents and adults in general, actually, which is functional to the child's emotional, cognitive, and psychosocial development in their early years. This time is a time when the brain is highly plastic and increases its volume almost of 300%. This means that the 70% of the human brain development occurs after birth, outside the mother womb, generating, for example, more than 1 million neural connections per second in the first year of life. And this is precisely the astonishing potential that makes a newborn human being incredibly adaptable to the environment, but also very vulnerable.
Yeah, and so that's what we know about mothers, what we know about children. Let's turn to fathers. In the last century, we, as a Western society, have witnessed an increase in fathers' involvement in childcare and childbearing. And this has been determined. Giulia, can you move to the next? Thank you very much. This has been determined by specific socioeconomic factors that have incentivized this change in fatherhood. There are many factors. We're not going to list them all, and I bet that no one actually can, but we can definitely include increased rates of women's employment, economic crisis at the beginning of the 21st century, and introduction of paid paternal leave among these. These factors have contributed to a cultural adaptation of what used to be the traditional male identity of a man becoming a father, which is in literature understood to be, it's defined as a model in which it is called as a it is defined, as a hegemonic model of masculinity, which basically means when we think about the kind of man who becomes a father, and he's seen as the provider for the family and the head of the family,
And so he's responsible for the full taking care of the family's resources. And that kind of masculinity, that idea of father, is called hegemonic in the sense of it used to be the one that is preferred among other forms of masculinity, and therefore holds some kind of supremacy over other masculinity forms. And what we've been witnessing in our Western society is a shift from this kind of model towards a model that has been defined as caring, so a more caring male model of a man becoming a father. And this has definitely generated growing interest among scientists in trying to understand whether or not there are neural mechanisms underlying this behavior in fathers and this involved behavior, and whether or not, and if so, what kind of effect that involvement has on child development.
And actually, the literature on this topic is still scarce. However, what is known and shared is that the transition to fatherhood involves psychological adaptation, and that an involved paternal attitude has positive effects on child development. And as well as subtle but essential structural changes in specific areas of the male brain. And this kind of relationships is made of stimuli and responses between the caregiver, and in this case the father, and the child. And it occurs in a sort of very refined attunement that refines every time more, according to how much father and baby have the possibility to know each other. And so we have a common starting point in the studies that we considered, and it is the identification of a neural network responsible for the caregiving, which is called Global Human Caregiving Network. And what scientists have discovered about it? This network consists of 9 brain areas associated with mentalization, emotional processing, and embodied simulation. The areas of the Global Human Caregiving Network are involved in all those behaviors that are related to caring for the child, which are central to the experience of fatherhood and parenthood, of course. In most studies of fathers, different stimuli and tasks have been used to test paternal responses to visual or auditory stimuli from children. And these studies have revealed the involvement of 3 main cortical networks, which are the ones related to mentalization, embodied simulation, and emotional regulation, as I said before, and a subcortical network connected to the paternal responses to child-related stimuli. Additionally, other areas responsible to visual auditory stimuli for children have been identified, for example, the frontal gyrus, the posterior cingulate cortex. And the literature suggests that a complex and distributed neural network is involved in facilitating paternal sensitivity and responses to child-related stimuli. So it's not a specific area of the brain, but it's a really complex network.
And an interesting finding that has been recently observed was observed through the comparison between 2 groups of men. One was composed of expectant fathers, so that meant men whose partners were pregnant, and a group of men defined as childless men, so with no children, and who had no plans of becoming a father in the near future. Okay, so there was no desire for fatherhood present. And the 2 groups were compared through fMRI. They were shown recorded caregiving scenes, such as changing a diaper, for instance, or playing with a child. And the finding that is really interesting is that the areas that Giulia mentioned very clearly activate in both groups of men. So regardless of fatherhood status, the men who participated in this study, it suggests they prefer an image of child care or playing with a child as opposed to a neutral image, for instance, packaging, the unpacking of a box or whatever. So this indicates that even before desiring a child, so before there is even a desire for fatherhood, this network represents the potential for a caregiving attitude. And in this sense, it truly is a global human caregiving network. And recognizing the existence of this network, scientists have also wondered whether the experience of fatherhood actually leads to changes in human brain in men.
And today, very recent studies show that becoming a father leads to neuroanatomical adaptations that affect the so-called default mode network, which is involved in the human capacity to infer others people's mental state, which is called mentalization or theory of mind, of course, and which facilitates empathy, and which reminds us of our very well-known study of Elseline eczema about a mother's brain. And we know that this network is part of the global human caregiving network we're talking about, or what is called parental brain, which comprises interconnected neural networks that support parenting. And scientists have measured a reduction in the volume of and cortical thickness in the specific area that we mentioned. And just like in adolescence and the pregnant brain, we know that less is better, less is more. So the fact that this area is reduces its volume and thickness means that this particular area is suggests a neurospecialization of this area in fathers, and furthermore that these adaptations occur in relation to the degree of paternal investment, that is, the individual father's response to his own or child.
And when scientists were investigating causal factors of these paternal neural modifications, they were trying to understand these changes, and they asked themselves, so when do these changes actually occur? When can we actually observe the starting point of these changes? And initially, these changes were observed in the postpartum period. So it was thought, okay, this happens after a child is born, right? However, more recently, it has been shown that some very subtle neuroanatomical modifications actually do take place in expectant fathers as early as the early stages of pregnancy of their partners, obviously. And so this is, I find, very interesting because these areas are affected by this very early process of specialization are those associated with emotional processing and emotional and cognitive empathy. And these expectant fathers have also shown greater activation in response to the sound of a crying baby compared to the group of childless men. So what these findings suggest is that as early as the early stages of pregnancy, in a father's brain, things are happening that actually will support his way of being in his unique, very special relationship with his very unique child in this dance of requests and responses that fine-tunes itself the more the father gets to know the baby and the baby gets to know his father. And also an additional fact that has emerged is that, contrary to what some may expect, the level of paternal involvement is actually what led to these changes. So these changes do not seem to be related to the amount of time, let's say, a father is a father, so to the age of the child, but more so to the kind of investment in the relationship that the father brings along. So what it has been defined as father involvement, paternal involvement, and it is associated with the concept of father sensitivity. Father sensitivity is obviously a complex concept, and it is also very difficult to measure. What is a sensitive father? How do we define that? What does it even mean, right, to be an involved father? Does it mean that the father does some specific things and doesn't do other things? And even scientists have a hard time defining precisely what this concept means. We do know that it is associated with all sorts of positive effects on children and their development. What we can draw upon is the broader concept of sensitive parenting, which basically means the fact that the parent can receive and interpret even subtle signals from the child and respond to these in a way that is sensitive or stimulating, or both at times. And this has been shown in literature that sensitive parenting is closely related to the promotion of both cognitive and socio-emotional functioning with positive effects. But to have a more concrete idea of what researchers try to measure in these studies when it comes to father sensitivity, we want to show you one of the questionnaires used, in which you can, I hope it is, I mean, you can see it. There are 30 different questions asked, as various as, for instance, how often does the father take the baby to the doctor, or change a diaper, or even play peekaboo or blow raspberries with the child? So what this shows us is that what the researchers really wanted to measure is not a specific kind of behavior, but it suggests that this is a nuanced variety of behaviors, and that what they wanted to capture was the degree of paternal involvement, and not a specific behavior, but rather that paternal involvement involves a variety of behaviors influenced by individual differences in that specific unique relationship.
So, where does it take? Let's start from what Dr. Moeley-Fletcher highlighted during his intervention on the topic of epigenetics. We know that the human DNA has a stable structure, but how it expresses its expression is continuously modulated based on the environmental exposure. And actually, the individual differences in caregiving attitudes, characteristics of that unique relationship between a parent and their child, form the basis of what we call the parental, it can be defined by the science, the parental environment, which interacts with the expression of the child's genes in a virtuous circle of predisposition and adaptation. So, at BabyBrains, we say that parents are as molds for their children's brain, so they adapt. They can adapt around their child to help his expression, what he can do best. And considering the result of the study presented, it could be said that when approaching the experience of fatherhood, the Global Human Caregiving Network lays the foundation on which commitment and participatory dedication to childcare and parent-child relationship build fine-tuned abilities, starting from the pregnancy itself through structural modifications that enhance the necessary capacity to perceive and to respond to subtle affective and cognitive signals from children, sensitively or stimulatingly, as Hannah was saying.
So we asked ourselves, is there any literature around the effects of an involved paternal attitude? And the same question was asked by several researchers, and there is a wide range of significant positive effects. Just to say some of these, it has been shown that paternal involvement significantly supports cognitive development and emotional and behavioral regulation in the child. Even in the case of a very chronic illness, pediatric outcomes have been positively impacted by paternal participation. We also know that paternal involvement has positive cascading effects on the child, on the mother, on the entire family context, both in terms of health and as a promoter of positive maternal behaviors, both pre and postpartum. And just to give an example, it has been shown that fathers play a crucial role in breastfeeding, regardless of whether the mother's, of whether the mother has or hasn't a previous experience in this regard, and by supporting an action that is biologically one of the mother. Furthermore, we do know that an involved paternal attitude has been shown to have positive moderating effects in cases of both clinical and subclinical maternal depression. So there is a really huge amount of positive effects on both mother, child, and family. What about the fathers?
So, we know that the life of a parent often intertwines with their professional life, and particularly for men. In the employment rate among fathers aged 25 to 54 reaches the 90.8% around Europe. So we ask ourselves, what is the impact of fatherhood on work? And let's consider the often mentioned soft skills. It can be noted that the networks that we talked about and that are affected by the observed changes in parents, specifically in fathers, regarding their involved fatherhood experience, are precisely those associated with the development of these increasingly demanded and sought after abilities, which are called, of course, soft skills. And they are related, for example, with emotional regulation or values aligned responding, authenticity. So we started from what Susan David, who was honored by the Harvard Business School for introducing this concept, is the emotional agility. And she argues that among the most important skills that can be brought to the workplace and in any area of life, of course, are empathy and emotional regulation. And starting from this concept of emotional agility, we can say that the increased brain plasticity in fathers resulting from their dedication to daily caregiving and this association with the development of collaborative social style suggests that an involved and participatory fatherhood experience can be a resource for men in the workplace, and particularly for those employed in the creative and collaborative fields.
Yeah, and it is clear to anyone, I think, that policies and cultural contexts worldwide have had historically and continue to have both direct and indirect effects on the level of paternal involvement. For instance, the time the fathers dedicate to the household and the division of domestic labor are both strongly influenced by local national policies and also by social cultural factors on fathers' personal norms and their expectations regarding the caregiving role, which obviously impacts their personal attitudes in raising children. So finding a balance in reconciling new paternal responsibilities with the role of the worker requires definitely legal and attitudinal changes. But what we wanted to show you today is a few of the considerations and reflections that have emerged from the research and that researchers are thinking about, which we found very, very interesting. So it has been suggested that the reduction in aggression levels in European societies over the past 7 decades reflects a positive social change that implies increased empathy and social consideration. And so the hypothesis had been proposed that the increased participation of men in taking care of children and in child rearing and their participation in the intricate give and take dances of daily family life lead to a decrease in the inclination to embrace absolute and divisive political programs. And research has found that children raised by more involved fathers exhibit better impulse control, lower levels of aggression, and greater social collaboration skills. For instance, the soft skills Neville mentioned, showing greater ability to manage conflict with peers with empathy and respect. In animal model studies, it has been shown that paternal care is associated with more complex social behavior. We could say more competent social behavior in offspring, and reduced aggression among males. And so the results of these studies to date open up the possibility that a more involved and dedicated participatory fatherhood experience could lead to reduced aggression and improved social skills in the next generation.
And the research has also highlighted that neurobiological changes in father's brain are largely influenced by caregiving acts, meaning actual nurturing and being engaged, dedicated, involved, and participatory. And this provides us models suggesting that significant neuroplasticity mediated by the experience of daily engaged caregiving without any hormonal changes associated with pregnancy and childbirth, but rather associated with the reciprocity of the father-child relationship, gives us entails some changes. And this gives us a reason to hope that in a society where adults have the possibility to engage and dedicate themselves to caregiving, children can thrive and contribute to a more empathetic, inclusive, and equitable society.
So to wrap up, let's revisit our initial questions. And does one become a father? So do you become a father? And yes, we would say that you do become a father, but how one harnesses the potential that nature has provided is a choice that is made through repeated, involved, and dedicated experiences in the relational dance between father and child, which has a potential to revolutionize not just one life or one relationship or one family, but actually society as a whole.
And it seems to us that the available studies indicate a direction, almost as if to say nature supports those who help themselves.
So fathers have the great opportunity to choose how to embrace their unique role as a dad in their own unique and irreplaceable way, with their own unique and irreplaceable child. It is a choice with incredible potential, of a bond that is chosen and nurtured. And in that choice and dedication, everything is transformed, starting with the father himself. And so, yeah, we wanted to leave you with one last question, and which is aimed at any dad listening to us. How will you choose to embody your unique role as a father and in your unique relationship?
Thank you so much for listening.
I can't hear you, Sylvia. I'm really sorry.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you so very much for this beautiful and inspiring talk. I'm sure that any parents, any fathers listening feel empowered now. They feel the spotlight on them, and they feel that their choices matter. That it's a struggle, it's hard, sometimes we don't quite know what to do, rightly so. It's a difficult task that really each man can play fully. And so I think, thank you for giving us such a clear picture of that. I'm also sure that lots of moms and maybe grandparents are listening to this, sending the link to the dads, hoping to encourage them, boost them, let them see how important and loved they are. So thank you so much for providing this tool for families, for helping raise the village that then will help raise the child.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Giulia and Hannah. It's been an amazing time with you, and we look forward to all the adventure that await in 2023-24 at BabyBrains.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.